Immigration reform, so-called, and the president addresses the nation. For all of us here, have a great weekend. Good night from New York. The Situation Room begins right now with Wolf Blitzer. Wolf?
Thanks very much, Lou. And to our viewers, you're in the Situation Room, where new pictures and information are arriving all the time. Standing by, CNN reporters across the United States and around the world to bring you tonight's top stories. Happening now. A corruption probe targets a former big shot over at the CIA. His office and his home are searched today. An extraordinary move at 7 p.m. here in Washington, where law enforcement officials are investigating allegations involving prostitutes and poker games amid a lot of other allegations. Also this hour, President Bush versus President Clinton. The two leaders are compared in our brand new poll. The results say a lot about the current state of the White House, and the results may surprise you. And a novel idea. When U.S. warplanes were about to bomb Iraq, what was Saddam Hussein doing? Apparently, he was writing a book that's now about to be published. I'm Wolf Blitzer. You're in the Situation Room. We begin with a developing story. President Bush considering sending National Guard troops to the border with Mexico to beef up security. We're going to have extensive coverage on that. That's coming up in a few moments. But first, there's another important story that we're following, a developing story of a wide-ranging federal investigation. It involves a search, possible seizure, it involves sex, and the CIA. It's unfolding right now here in the nation's capital. The FBI and 4 other government agencies are investigating a man who only 4 days ago was the number 3 official over at the CIA. Our Joe Johns is joining us now from the newsroom. He's got details. Joe?
Good evening, Wolf. The searches are part of an investigation that, at least for now, appears to be expanding. Around 8 a.m., the FBI and other law enforcement agents conducted simultaneous searches at the home and office of the former top CIA official who just resigned this week.
I can confirm that we executed search warrants at the home and offices of Dusty Fogo this morning.
Kyle Dusty Fogo was the agency's executive director, now caught up in an investigation with former Congressman Randy Duke Cunningham, who is serving jail time after pleading guilty to accepting bribes. Officials will not say what they were looking for in the searches.
Because the search warrant is sealed and it isn't part of an ongoing investigation, I can't comment any further at this time.
As part of the broader investigation, law enforcement sources say both the FBI and the CIA's Inspector General are looking into whether Fogo did anything wrong in awarding a contract to a company with ties to his longtime friend Brent Wilkes, who's been implicated but has not been charged in the Cunningham probe. Also gaining the attention of investigators is that Fogo attended poker games Wilkes hosted at 2 Washington hotels. A CIA spokeswoman has said Fogo insists he did nothing wrong, saying that the government contracts for which he was responsible were properly awarded and administered. Sources familiar with the case say they are also investigating allegations that Wilkes provided prostitutes at some of those hotel suites for Congressman Cunningham. The CIA spokeswoman says while Fogo was at some poker games at those suites, he did not witness any, quote, untoward behavior. Wilkes and Fogo's lawyers have not returned CNN's calls, but they have said their clients deny any wrongdoing. Wolf?
Joe Johns, thanks for that. Dusty Fogo resigned from the CIA 3 days after the agency's director, Porter Goss, announced his resignation. A CIA spokeswoman says the Fogo investigation has absolutely nothing to do with Goss's decision to step down. Earlier, I asked the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Peter Hoekstra, about Fogo and Goss.
I know Porter pretty well. His integrity is unquestioned. I can't believe that he would have anything to do with what's going on, potentially with Dusty Fogo. He would be the person that would lead the effort to get corruption out of the CIA.
And do you know this Dusty Fogo? Have you ever met him?
I've met Dusty Fogo, yes.
What do you think of him?
I've not had a lot of experience with him. I did have dinner with Dusty on one occasion, but the kind of details that are coming out today, like I said, I've only met him a couple of times.
Congressman Peter Hoekstra in the Situation Room earlier today. Also tonight, President Bush is trying to get ready for a new debate, a politically charged debate over immigration, and he's getting ready for a primetime address to the nation. He'll give his nationally televised speech on this immigration issue Monday night. Let's go get some specific details from our White House correspondent, Suzanne Malveaux. What's the expectation, Suzanne?
Well, certainly this is a very clear signal that President Bush is making immigration reform a top domestic priority. Senior aides saying that is why he's going to be using this primetime address to talk directly to the American people. He also, of course, wants to give members of Congress a push to say, look, I need a piece of legislation that I can sign on this issue and sign into law, essentially. The three elements of the speech, we are told, first he's going to talk about border security. He's also going to focus on interior enforcement as well as a guest worker program. Now, we are told the president is going to make news in this speech. What is that news? One possibility here, one option the president is looking at when it comes to getting tougher on border security, enforcing security, he is considering enhancing the National Guard to patrol the border in the south, perhaps a couple thousand on that border. They're already being used, but in an enhanced capacity also for the federal government to pay for it. Wolf?
I understand that Tony Snow, the new White House press secretary, started off his new job effectively meeting with the reporters earlier this morning. Suzanne, how did that go?
It's fair to say it was a fiasco, and I think Tony Snow would actually agree. It's the informal briefing that they have off camera. Usually it happens in the briefing room. He decided he wanted to be more informal, move it to his own office. The problem that happened here, however, is he started about 10 minutes early. The door was shut, so a lot of reporters were standing outside, didn't realize they were missing the briefing. When they opened the door, and they did realize, however, there wasn't enough room actually in his office, so you had reporters who were lined up outside around the hallway trying to hear what he was saying. This guy is 6 feet tall. He got up from his desk. He started shouting at one point. People still couldn't hear what he was saying. Ultimately, Tony admitted that it was a big mess and apologized profusely. He was very good-spirited, very good-natured about the whole thing, and he said, okay, next week we're going to have it in the briefing room.
Suzanne Malveaux at the White House, thanks very much. You'll be going to a lot of those briefings. Suzanne Malveaux and Joe Johns, by the way, part of the best political team on television. And remember, you can see the president's immigration speech live here on CNN. Lou Dobbs is going to be joining us here in the Situation Room. Our coverage begins 7 p.m. Eastern, Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern, here in the Situation Room. Now to Iraq, where militia groups are beginning to rival insurgents as a threat to both Americans and Iraqis. Even President Bush now says militias are perhaps the main challenge in Iraq. CNN's Brian Todd is watching this story. He's joining us here in Washington. Brian?
Wolf, it's an escalating problem in Iraq with a new air of urgency tonight after the president's remarks. U.S. military commanders tell CNN these militias are getting more violent and more brazen. Near the central Iraqi city of Baquba, captured fighters wearing Iraqi army uniforms held by U.S. and Iraqi soldiers. They're not who they appear to be. U.S. military officials say some of these men confessed to being members of the notorious Mahdi militia, linked to the radical Shiite cleric Muqtada al-Sadr. They'd gotten hold of Iraqi army uniforms, gone around in pickup trucks, kidnapping villagers. U.S. and Iraqi forces were tipped off and intercepted the militia.
When they got there, they found a force of about 40 individuals and 7 vehicles and proceeded to engage those criminal forces.
A firefight that left 5 militiamen dead, dozens of others apprehended, but some got away with kidnapped victims. A senior U.S. military official on the ground tells CNN groups like this are, quote, one of my biggest problems, a problem that's gotten the attention of his commander-in-chief.
Perhaps the main challenge is the militia that tend to take the law into their own hands.
In Baquba, Baghdad, and elsewhere, local residents tell CNN these lethal militias are the real power in the streets, answering only to their leaders like al-Sadr, not to American forces or Iraqi government officials. The problem? The failure to fill key cabinet positions, leaving a power vacuum in Iraq.
We have had an extended political hiatus while this government has been standing up. And that has permitted radical politicians and some militias to claim to represent, to regulate, and to protect their own communities.
We're told that a new Iraqi cabinet could be named as early as Sunday, but even then the job of containing the militias would only begin, and the scope of the